Hey everybody, hope you guys are doing well. In this tutorial, I want to show you a little bit about how to work with those graphs that we worked with last week and how to kind of get your own data working within the template that you've already got, hopefully working for you. So make sure that that works with the two charts, at least with the exercise that we went over last week. Because that, again, will be a really good template for you to use for your next project, and you're just going to inject your own data. So I'm going to show you kind of how to do that now. So the first thing we need to do is actually figure out what kind of data we're going to use. In this example, it compared all these different professions and home rental versus median income and all those kinds of things. You can look anywhere you really want for data. And it really doesn't matter kind of whether you find it in an Excel spreadsheet or even if you find it on Wikipedia or, kind of get your own data. This is going to kind of give a tutorial on how to find data in a CSV, in a comma separated value file, and lets you kind of manipulate that to find some data. So I'm going to go to a website called data.world. Data.world is a repository for all kinds of data. It's kind of like a GitHub in a way for data, where you can create your own data sets, you can upload your own files, and you can share them with other people. And really, once you create an account, you can just search the world for all kinds of data. Everything from UFO data, which if you just type that in, you'll see different UFO sightings, which I think is always fun to look at, to pet adoption agencies, and things like that, or pet adoptions in your area. But I'm going to go ahead and type in coronavirus, because there's obviously a lot of data out there right now for it, and different groupings of data. And this particular topic is going to be pretty recently updated, and there's going to be lots of different sources for data. I'm just going to click on the first example, and this one here is really a kind of repository that has lots of different data sources that people can go to and find. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on this coronavirus data source, which really is a CSV. You can see here it's a comma separated value of, and it's really only up until this is what March 11th, and this is data up just based on March 11th and 10th. So it's probably not the most exhaustive data out there, and that's something you have to think about is what is the timeline and where is it from, and kind of what exactly you're getting. But I'm just going to use this as an example. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the data.world site, and there's a button on here that says download, and I'm going to download it. And then as it downloads, you can see it popped up in my browser. Once I go ahead and click on that, it basically opened up my Excel spreadsheet into a new file. So I'm going to go ahead and let you see that. And here I have an Excel spreadsheet that has all the data that I had just downloaded. Now it's got the province or state where the cases have been found, then it's got the country, then you have when it was last updated, confirmed cases, deaths, recovered, and then a latitude and longitude. You'll notice that some examples from code actually have spots for latitude and longitude if you want to do something like that as well. So this is a pretty decent data set. So the first thing I have to figure out is what am I looking for, and what am I exactly wanting to do? If I look at the examples given in the template, you'll see that it really gives you an example of a bar chart, a column chart, and then a line chart. So this doesn't really have a timeline to it, so I don't think that I would use the line chart exactly, but for this one, I'll maybe turn it into a bar chart. And maybe I think it would be good to, maybe find the confirmed cases and compare some major countries, and then some confirmed deaths, and then some recovers. So my items in the drop down would be the types of cases, and then my items in the chart will actually be the countries. So I think it's important to start thinking about that before you start messing with your data too much. You really have to kind of think about what you're trying to find and how you're trying to visualize it in some way. So the first thing that I'll need to do is isolate some countries. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to get in my B column chart, and over here in the data tab, I can click on filter. And hopefully you saw this in the other Excel tutorial where you could take different data columns and isolate just specific things like countries. So let's go ahead and look at China, for example. I'm going to isolate just China. And now basically it filtered out, so I can only view the China results. Now you can see that these big blocks are here because they're kind of folding in 3 through 8, and then 16, 17, and 18, they're hidden right now. And so if I wanted to calculate how many confirmed cases there were in China, I'm actually gonna have to isolate all of these separately. So what I'm gonna do is select them all, and I'm gonna copy them. And basically what it's doing is copying these individual cells that are only the China results. Then once I copy them, I can open a new sheet and paste my results in a new sheet. So the only thing that's on this sheet is 33 results, and I can start doing some summations and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and do an equals sum, and then grab the first column and drag all the way down. And then I'll do the same for the next tab, equals sum, and then I'm going to drag all these. And then as you saw, hopefully in the Excel tutorial, you can grab the little edge here and drag it to the right, and it will do the same thing in the next column. And so these are my totals, number of confirmed, and then the deaths, and then the recovered. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new sheet again, because I want to actually start working with this data in one large chart. So I'm going to make a recovered, let's see, I think it was confirmed, deaths, and recovered. So confirmed, deaths, and then recovered. And then I've got my countries, China, let's go Italy, because there were many cases there, and then the USA. So here in China, there were a certain number of confirmed cases versus deaths versus recovered. I'm going to take these 3 items and copy them, and I'm going to paste them here. Now, when I just straight up paste them, it's actually, you can see pasting my formula. I don't want to paste the formula, I want to paste the values that were from this formula. And so you may notice that if you copy and paste from Excel, you might get something like that. So instead of pasting, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a paste special, and then I'm going to paste my values. And that's going to actually take the values and not the actual formula. And so now I've got my numbers right there. So now that I've got my China cases, I'm going to go back to my original table. I'm going to go into this filter thing, and I'm going to unselect China, and then I'll go down to Italy. So here we have Italy. And in this case, there was just one result, and I'm going to take these and copy them and paste them into my chart as well. And you can see the numbers just came right over because it wasn't a formula, it was actual results from the data set. And then the last one that I'm going to do is the USA. So I'm going to scroll all the way down here to the US, and now I've got lots of results. I'm going to do basically what I did with the China results, copy those, make a new sheet, paste it, and then I can start calculating the confirmed cases. Equals sum, and I'm going to drag all these down. Now again, these numbers are not recent, they're old, and so if you are working with data that's too old, you might not want to use it at all. In this case is just an example, so normally I wouldn't be using this old of data, because when you do things like that, it can really be deceiving to people who are looking for information. So anyway, this is just an example. So now I've got a kind of a mini table that is a summation of what I found in my chart. And sometimes that's the hardest part, is to isolate just certain, what angle are you trying to get at, and what are you trying to do to manipulate. Maybe you might want to, resort some of these so that you can find, and this is already sorted by the most cases to the least, but you might want to, say which countries had the best recovery rate. You might want to take this and then do a sort, and we can sort the recoveries and see who, as of late, I sorted that wrong. I'm going to go with largest to smallest. And so we can see that in China and Iran actually had a really high recovery rate, and you might want to compare recovery rates from different countries or something. But again, It's something you'll have to do before you start injecting all this content into your code. But what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to take these 3 countries, Italy, China, and the US, and I'm going to put them into a chart that I already have in my example. So basically your first step is to take your data and put it into a very simple table and build something like this. Another type of chart might be, over time. So you might want to do each month. So maybe in February, you want to take a look at the number of cases in China, Italy, and the USA. And then say there were, 200 and, I'm just making numbers up at this point. Or if you wanted to compare deaths or things like that, 240 and and then we go February and then March, and then you could fill out something very similar. And then April and things like that. So anyway, I'm just typing in numbers at this point. Okay, so say these are kind of 2 different pieces of data that you are going to integrate within your chart. One is going to be a column chart comparing these countries. Another one might be a line chart because these are dates, and you might want to be able to see the different dates depending on the different countries. So that would be my first step for you guys, would be to get 2 kind of mini tables going that are representative of your larger data set. Now these are all coming from a CSV, but even if you get your data from Wikipedia or RBIs for your favorite baseball players, comparing those, again, the first step is to really get it into a chart like this. The next thing is to kind of look at the data that's on our example, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up the code here and start working with the data that we have. So in this first example, the draw chart example, it's got a lot of data here, right? These are a lot of different data points. Okay, so for the first one, what we're trying to measure in the first example would be the number of total cases instead of obviously median income. And so we want to type in the number of confirmed cases. So this will be called confirmed, and that's going to be in quotes because it is a string. And so these are the confirmed cases, and then we'll have country 1, we could say China, we could have the next one be Italy, and the next one be the USA. Okay, and really measure doesn't need to be in quotes. These are keys, and so keys don't really need to be in quotes, but because we're going to access them later. So the measure, we're going to check the confirmed cases, China, Italy, and the USA, and then that's pretty much it. We only have 3 countries there. So I can delete the rest of this data, and I can close it with this curly bracket. Now the rest of these are, I'm just going to go ahead and delete them for time's sake, and then I'm going to take my data here and copy it a couple times so that I can have kind of a template. So instead of the measurement on the next one being confirmed cases, the next one's going to be deaths. And then on the third one, instead of being confirmed cases, it's going to be recovered. So these are my measurements. Obviously, these numbers are not correct. And so I will want to change some of these to actually match my data. So the number of confirmed cases in China were 80,000. Let me go ahead and paste that in. The number in Italy were 12,000. And then the number in the USA was 1,200. Again, these are from a certain date. Now the actual deaths in China were 3,161. In Italy, it was 827. And then in the USA, 36. And then we've got the actual recoveries in China was 61,644. Italy 1,045, and then the USA 8. Okay, so now that I have basically another version of my info, I can start looking down here in how I'm assigning my data and all that stuff. Now, I have to scroll down here to where I'm actually letting the user make their selection. And you have to be a little bit careful with these two charts because I've got my draw chart and then I've got my draw chart 2. Now this is just the function. All the way from here all the way down to here is my actual function, which is what I'm working on now, the top chart. But the actual drop down that they're going to choose from in this first example is coming from the drop down. So I have to go all the way down here to where I'm talking about the drop downs. And I have two options. I have the drop down from before, where service, artist, and tech were the options. And then I have the drop down 2. I'm working on the drop down, just regular the drop down this time. So I'm going to allow the user to choose confirmed cases, and then they're going to choose deaths, and then they're going to choose recovered. It's called recoveries. Now, when they make these choices, these have to relate to items in my actual data. My data measurements were called confirmed, deaths, and recovered, okay? And now the reason that I have these values is because when they make a selection, say they chose recoveries, and it's gonna access the data, it's gonna access this particular item. So recovered has to match what I put in my data. And up here in my data, I wrote recovered, okay? So now that I've got those, I can go into my data and say if the selection, which when they went to the drop down, say they went and chose confirmed, it's gonna now selection will either be confirmed, deaths, or recovered, right? Those exact items. Now, if the selection ever matches the info I.measure, right? And so the measurement's gonna be either confirmed, deaths, or recovered. So if they chose recovered, then it's gonna go into info I.China and assign this number to this variable. Then info I.Italy, and then info I.USA. Because these keys are going to be assigning these variables. Now, because I'm only grabbing 3, I can delete the rest. And really, I'm not comparing another grouping. And so I'm going to go ahead and delete those as well. This is going to be a really simple chart. Now down here, now that it's got my items, I'm going to go down here to my Google chart and I'm going to display countries, China, Italy, USA, and then just the Z1 value because I'm not going to be working with a comparative column chart. If you want to do a comparative column chart and add some more items, you definitely can, but just to make it easy, we are going to remove that. And then we are going to comparing countries regarding coronavirus, and I'm going to go ahead and save it. And then I'm going to go ahead and look at this in a browser. And so now I can see I have a certain number of confirmed cases, certain number of deaths, and recoveries. And so that is one way that you can take data and take it from an Excel spreadsheet and turn it into your own data. Some of this will require you to code in your own content here in the actual info for the data, and it will take a little bit of time to understand. And so when we have our chat this week on Zoom, feel free to talk about your data set and any challenges you might have in doing that. So you got this week, and then you have also next week to work on this. But it would be really great if this week you focused on getting the data set figured out and get an Excel spreadsheet going and start getting a very miniature version of a table going, and then start plugging it into your chart that's already hopefully working for you. So a little bit of a challenge, but I think you guys can do it. And of course, email me or we can have a Zoom meeting. I can look at your code and I can help in that way as well. So good luck finding data and integrating it into your charts this week.